Well, through the week, we've been covering for you the nuclear aspects that Kenya is planning to have a nuclear power by 2027. That is close to 16 years from now. And of course, the roadmap to having a nuclear plant is quite sensitive, with close to 19 key infrastructure aspects to be addressed through the world regulatory body, that is the International Atomic Energy Agency. And right now, I'm going to get into that conversation, and I'll be speaking to Dr. Anna Wilson, who is a scholar and a nuclear expert, just to get her perspectives around why should African countries consider going the nuclear way. Perhaps, Anna, that is a big conversation now. Have we exhausted all our other energy sources that we have before we consider nuclear?
I don't think you've exhausted all your other energy sources yet, and it's an important thing to think about what the balance will be for any one country. Certainly most countries in Africa, Kenya included, are looking to increase the amount of energy they can provide to their population, both for domestic and commercial and industrial use. So in order to do that, you have to increase your generating capacity. Now, there are various different sources of power, and one of these is nuclear, but you haven't yet exhausted all the other options. So it's just one thing that needs to be considered in a mix of different sources.
And one of the big conversations around nuclear power is the site where the plant will be built. Perhaps just educate us a bit on what some of the key issues that should be up for discussion. Right now, the Kenya Nuclear Electricity Board is conducting site studies to see where can this plant be located. Of course, the academics say the plant needs to be set up near a water body. And looking at all these dynamics, what are some of the other considerations around setting up a plant?
Well, of course, I'm not an expert in Kenya and where you might have possible sites for plants. The reason why academics say that it's important to have a body of water nearby is it's absolutely crucial for the normal operation of the plant that there is a dependable water supply. This is because one of the way that a nuclear reactor works is that the fission that's going on in the core of the nuclear reactor is generating heat. And that heat is absolutely essential because it's what's used to drive the turbines that generate the electricity. So it's impossible to operate a plant without that. But that also means then that you need to cool that steam back down again once it's been used to drive the turbines, and that then can allow that water to be recirculated through the machine. So that means that it absolutely has to be a dependable supply of cold water to keep taking the heat away from the core of the nuclear reactor. It's not only critical for the generation of electricity, but it's critical for safety, because that's actually the biggest risk in a nuclear power plant, that there could be overheating in the power plant and you'd have some problem with the reactor fuel because it melts. So it's absolutely essential to be a totally dependable supply of water to keep cooling things down. Having said that, of course, there are different forms of dependable supply of water. There's lakes, there's rivers, there's the sea. So a reactor can be sited near any of these things. Other issues that are important to think about are, of course, issues like the geology of a region. How stable is it? How easy is it to build a large power plant with a lot of concrete and a lot of steel involved? How easy is it to get to the place? So what's the road infrastructure like? What's the transport infrastructure like to get to and get away from that place? But also equally critical are social and cultural issues, and so you need to consider the desires and well-being of the local population.
And maybe looking at this issue of nuclear power, there's a big concern around the type of nuclear reactors that a country can consider. Perhaps what are some of the latest nuclear reactors in the market, and what are some of the other things that should come to the fore when it comes to selection of a nuclear reactor that a country can buy?
So the most tried and tested forms of nuclear reactor, there are two types, one that's called a pressurized water reactor and one that's called a boiling water reactor. They have very similar principles. They've been used now in many countries for a long time, have been developed so that from the initial designs, they've now become far more safe and sophisticated. They're produced by reputable companies. They're used in countries like South Korea, in America, and so on. So these are fairly standard types of reactor that I think Kenya would probably be considering buying. There are other types of reactor. There are some that are on the horizon that have a lot of potential in the future, but that aren't yet there. So one that you might hear something about is a type of reactor called a small modular reactor. That has a lot of potential for the future, but isn't actually available on the scale that Kenya would need to fill its energy needs yet. So.
And thank you very much, Anna Wilson, just talking to us about matters to do with the nuclear power, which Kenya is hoping to go nuclear in the next 16 years. Of course, right now it's a lot of the groundwork happening when it comes to ensuring all the key issues are in place, and nuclear power is considered as a major boost for a number of countries when it comes to boosting the power supply. And right now Kenya is looking at close to 4,000 megawatts of nuclear power to be connected to the grid, and that is the issue around nuclear power. And